Okay, we are live again. I may have seen you and lost you, and I apologize. That's what happens when you have bad Wi-Fi, I guess. I don't know. So welcome to our Friday Childproof Parenting Live. I'm Melissa Benaroya, and I'm here to chat with you about the topic of the week. And I sent this topic out in email, so if you're on my email list at childproofparenting.com, you got the information, and I'm here to answer your questions, either live or those that were sent in to me. So I'm going to answer the questions that were sent to me, and if you have something that comes up or something burning, please jump in. That's why I'm here. So I want to first just share with you, the topic this week was about some of the parenting mistakes that I see over and over again, and it's these things that we've all done. These are the things that our parents did, and we just have so much information now. We have so much that we can do better, quite honestly, and we can create deeper relationships with our kids. So I really wanted to share that with you because I just wanted to bring the awareness around what we're choosing to do, how it affects our kids, and how it affects the relationship that we have with our kids as well. So I'm going to just share with you those three things, and then I'm going to answer questions. I have a question here that somebody wrote in and some comments that were left on the blog as well that I'll address. So the three biggest mistakes that I see over and over again is, this is not like in general, but I have a private practice where I work with families, and they come to me with their biggest challenges, and I always ask them, like, what have you been trying? What have you done that's either worked or didn't work? And usually there's some kinds of rewards, some kind of bribing to get things done, or sticker charts, or marble jars. There's all those types of things. So rewards are not effective ways to invite your child's cooperation and instill the values that you probably want to instill in your kids, like being responsible. So that was number one. Number two was timeouts. And timeouts is a way of punishment, quite honestly. Timeouts were created as a way to help kids learn to self-soothe, calm down, reflect, but many times it's not used that way. So there's different ways to use timeouts, and we'll talk about the ways that are most effective. And then I also mentioned using consequences, and consequences can be both a form of punishment and a form of discipline. And consequences that punish are not helpful, and those are the easiest ones to use, quite honestly. Those are the knee-jerk response, like just things flying out of your mouth because you're feeling pissed and overwhelmed and out of control. They're not super helpful. So we'll talk a little bit about using consequences that do work, that do teach, and are respectful. So those were the three top biggest mistakes that I see over and over again. And I myself have done those things too. So it's not that like, oh my gosh, I'm so perfect, I never do those things. No, I have in the past. I have invested a lot in my parenting and the way I respond to my kids, so I don't have to fall back on those. And usually what parents say is like, I don't know what else to do. These are like the things I'm doing because I don't know what else to do. And that's why they work with me, because I help them to create a plan for themselves and their family. So in thinking about the rewards, I think being mindful that bribes and threats are two sides of the same coin, that it's really a form of manipulation. And we don't want to manipulate our kids because, number one, once they get old enough and smart enough, they turn it around on us. And they say things like, well, how much are you going to pay me to do that? Or I don't have to do that because, you're not going to give me anything. So being mindful that it's not helpful. I hear a lot of parents saying like, my child's constantly negotiating with me. And why do you think they're negotiating? Because we set that up. We created that. We use that in our parenting. So if you are tired of the negotiation, stop using threats and bribes. Not super helpful. I think what we can do instead is use encouragement and acknowledgement. And I reference Alfie Cohen's book, and I also reference Carol Dweck, and they both have tons of information and research on how to use encouragement. And it's just acknowledging, it's just saying what you see, using an evaluation-free statement, which encourages, like, wow, you did that all by yourself. It's just an acknowledgement. It's not that it's either good or bad, it's just an acknowledgement. So we can say what we see, or we can just ask curiosity questions, like, tell me how you figured that out. Much more effective at reinforcing the things that we want our kids to do, because that builds an internal or an intrinsic motivation. They feel good, they feel pride, and that will drive future behavior. So eliminating the rewards and the charts and the stickers, because it's not super helpful. It may be in the short term, but in the long term, this is a long-term game parenting. So I think being mindful that there are other things that you can do. And that's really what I wanted to drive home with this piece, is that there are other ways that you can respond. There are other ways of getting your kids to cooperate. So that was the first one, was the rewards. The second one was the timeouts. And as I had mentioned before, sending a child to their room out of anger really is a punishment. And they don't go to the room and feel bad about what they did and reflect and try to do better. No, they usually go in and they're pissed and they're angry and they're thinking about how much they hate you or how they're going to get away with it next time. So it's not an opportunity for learning. And I think we can use timeouts as a way to learn, and a way to learn to self-soothe and calm down, because that's a skill. So number one, it's important that you're modeling this. Your kids need to see you taking that cleansing breath, or, hey, you know what? I need to step out of the room for a minute and take a break before we talk about this. So they need to see you taking those breaks. I think a really positive way is using a positive timeout. And that's something that you create with your child, and you do it ahead of time. You don't do it in the moment. You talk with your child about what they need to do for themselves to calm down, or where they'd like to go, letting them kind of create their own plan. So when the moment comes, you can just draw them to that plan they created for themselves. Because when you tell them what to do, like go sit in your room or on the couch or take a deep breath, you're actually creating a power struggle, because you're telling them what to do. So much more effective to let them come up with their own ideas, and you can help coach them and guide them in how to do that. But having their plan is so much more effective, because really young kids, when we say things like go sit in the other room or go sit on that chair, I don't want to talk to you, many times they misinterpret that. They misinterpret that as a love withdrawal. So we don't want them to think, oh my gosh, mommy only loves me when I act the way she wants me to, and she doesn't love me. And I know that's not your intention. That's none of our intentions, but that's how a little mind interprets these things. So I think there's a much better way, and this is just making small changes to what you're doing to make it so much more effective, and so kids can learn from those moments. And the third thing that I brought up was using consequences, and consequences that teach. So 3 ways, and I'm drawing a lot from positive disciplines, methods of using consequences and encouragement and timeouts. 3 ways to ensure that your consequence is a means of teaching is, number 1, is the consequence related to what happened? If your child doesn't eat broccoli, you can't, take away a play date the next day. There's no connection. How are they going to learn about the importance of eating broccoli when the play date is taken away? So it's related to what happened. The consequence also needs to be reasonable. It can't be, you know what, we're never coming back to this park, or you're not having a play date again. It's simply, you know what, we've got to go, we'll try again tomorrow, or we'll reschedule. So it happens in the moment, it's reasonable, it's not, unreasonable in the fact that you're probably not actually going to follow through with it, which is just as equally important. And thirdly, it needs to be delivered respectfully. So even if a consequence is related to what happened and it's reasonable, if it's delivered out of anger or frustration, it immediately becomes a punishment, because the child then is focused on your anger and frustration with them. So the 2 consequences that I proposed that you try using is the natural consequence, and that's the consequence that happens in response to your child's behavior without you getting involved. Sometimes these are the hardest to use, so you have to zip your lip. You have to say nothing. You have to let things happen that are a little uncomfortable for you and probably a little uncomfortable for your child. So you know what? They don't want to put their shoes on. They've got their socks on, and they have to carry their shoes, and they walk across the grass to the car to leave for school, and their socks are wet. oh man, that stinks, right? They have wet socks, and guess what? They get to live with wet socks for a day. Are they gonna die? No. Are they gonna catch pneumonia? No. But they're gonna be kind of uncomfortable. So they're gonna learn from their own choices that way. Or if you have an older child and they don't do their homework and they show up for school and maybe they trade papers and they're grading each other's papers and your kid doesn't have one, they're gonna feel kind of embarrassed. So let that embarrassment do the teaching. You don't have to step in and tell them, see what happens when we piggyback like that and see, I told you so, or say things like, that's what happens. It's not helpful because then, again, their attention is on you and not the choice that they made for themselves. So those are the natural consequences. The logical consequences I actually referred to, those are the ones that are related, reasonable, and delivered respectfully. And those are created with you or together with your child. So I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of different ways that we can work with our kids. So the 3 mistakes are things that we can simply make tweaks to. It's not like wipe the slate clean, start all over. It's just making simple tweaks to what you're already doing to be more effective, to having that relationship that you want with your child. So number 1, I wanted to answer Michelle, and I did in the blog post, but she was concerned because the information I shared about rewards is very different than what she's read before, and I totally understand that. And so I want to make sure that if you also are interested in learning more, that you check out Alfie Cohen's book, Punished by Rewards. He has tons of information there. And if you just go to alfiecohen.com, he has some great articles. All of his articles are posted on his website that share the research behind those teachings. And I also reference Carol Dweck, and she is a famous researcher on the growth mindset. And she shares her research. She's at Stanford right now. She shares her research about how we can be much more effective at encouraging kids when we focus on the effort that they put in and the process versus using praise. So she wrote a book called Mindset, and all of her research is there. But seriously, if you Google these people, you will find tons of information. So Michelle, I hope you have a chance to read up on both of their works because I think it's really, really interesting. I also mentioned one other thing. If you're not somebody that likes to read an entire book, I love Poe Bronson's Nurture Shock because he has chapters on different topics, and this is one of the topics he covers in his book, Nurture Shock. So go ahead and check that one out, and there's tons of great information in that book on all types of parenting topics as well. It's kind of one of my favorites, so I wanted to share that. But I also had somebody write me an email after they got my email, so I wanted to answer Kara. She said, I opened the tips for timeout download and just want to make sure I got all of it. So she clearly wanted more. Is it just one page? Yes, the download was just one page. There was a description of an overall concept of timeout. Any help with language to use with the child while reframing the concept. He definitely won't go alone to timeout without being quote unquote forced, if that makes sense. And that totally makes sense. So I think, first of all, Kara, that if you have this conversation ahead of time with your child about coming up with their plan, they're going to be much more amenable to taking that time out. And sometimes it's a time in. Sometimes it's not choosing to go to their cozy corner and read a book. Sometimes the choice is to sit there with you and calm down. So they don't actually have to go away. We can be present. We don't have to interact with them, but sometimes that time in together can be even more powerful. So I would suggest starting there with that time in and focusing during that time in. And I've talked about this on the blog, and I talk about it in every class I teach, that if you focus on your emotional state first and calm down your body, because usually when your child escalates, you escalate, right? So if you focus on your emotional state and just staying calm next to your child during this time in, he will come back down a whole lot faster. So I want you to notice that time in might be even more helpful than a timeout. So kind of you have two options there, and I would say play with it. I would have that game plan and have a conversation with him. And some families have to have two conversations, like what do we do at home when things get crazy, and have that game plan. And then also, what do we do when we're out in public and things get crazy? Like, what's our timeout strategy when people need to chill out for a minute? So I think having those two conversations will be important, and then just experimenting with that time in. So Kara was the one person that wrote in this week that I wanted to make sure I addressed, and if there is more I can answer for you, Kara, because I encourage you to be here, I'm happy to. If you're not here with me live today, then you can always post a question to this Facebook Live, and I will make sure I respond to all of the questions that come up here as well. So please go ahead and try those two out. If you need more from me, Kara, I'm happy to give you some more examples. I think also noticing that sometimes our kids need a little help following through with their plan, and we can help them, and we can do it in a really calm way. There's a handful of other tools that we can use to help them make that choice to take their time out, and that's a whole other blog post. That's another conversation, and something that I include in all my classes as well. But I wanted to make sure I had just addressed these three things today because I think they're really important. I think just having this awareness around, gosh, what am I doing and saying to and with my child, and what is being communicated? How are they ingesting this? How are they perceiving what it is I'm saying? And what are they deciding about themselves when I respond to this way? So I think a big piece of parenting and coming up with your parenting plan is just having the awareness around the choices that you're making. So I wanted to open this up in case there's anybody here that's joined us and has any questions. I want to make sure I answer those right now. I understand we're in the middle of the day. It's Friday. Everybody's got a lot going on. But I wanted to make sure I made time this week to answer your questions and be here to just dialogue with you because I'm excited to get to know you. Many of you have noticed I've been sending more emails than usual, and that's because I want to create a community. And speaking of community, I also developed a private childproof parenting community group. So a group where you can share your experience, ask questions, not just of me, but other people in the community group. We already have over 100 people in this group, so I hope that you will join us. I think if you go on Facebook and you just search Childproof Parenting Community Group, you'll find it. It'll be right there. So I want to make sure that you join there and know that I'm there in the group to answer questions and share information and resources with you. But that this is a place for all of you to connect because I have thousands of people reading my emails and asking me questions. And I just think you're going to get a lot more value when you hear what other people are asking and what other people are sharing. So I encourage you to join that group. I also wanted to mention before I forget that I am launching a spring 2017 parenting boot camp. So it's just a 5-day boot camp. It's just to get things back on track. We always kind of like let go and get lazy every now and then, and wanted to give you an opportunity to get some feedback, get some new ideas to try out. So I have a 5-day boot camp starting on April 3rd, and you can find information about that on the Childproof Parenting Facebook site. So probably down below or up above, wherever this Facebook Live is living right now. So 5-day boot camp. It's not a challenge. It's just a boot camp. It's to get your parenting booty back on track. Many of you are probably going to be recovering from spring break or entering spring break. So I think it's always good to kind of brush up on some parenting tools before we have like intense one-on-one time with our kids. So I thought that would be a nice time to do it. All right, well, I think I had a chance to answer everybody's questions today. I want to thank all of you for watching, and if you have more questions, please don't be shy. Don't feel like you're taking up my time or the time of others that are watching or reading, because they are going to benefit from everything that you're asking and you're sharing as well. It's a gift. So please don't hesitate to jump in, ask questions, and share your experiences. Everybody, this is a process. We're learning how to do this together. You're not alone. All right, you guys, have a great weekend. I will see you next Friday on a whole new topic. Take care. Bye.